Thank you, Madam Speaker. Excuse me. Judge Poe is exactly right. One of our most fundamental rights as Americans is the right to be left alone. This is important legislation, and appreciate the judge bringing it to us. We're going to hear from our good friend Congressman Royce in a minute, who has been working on this legislation for many years, and hear from him in just a moment. I want to make sure, however, we as a Congress are focused on the financial hurricane stalking America just over the horizon. The financial, really, if we're not careful, the urgency of this financial hurricane is something we cannot afford to ignore any longer. We as a Congress have as our highest priority, again, the preservation of the security and financial safety of future generations. We're guardians of the Treasury. We're responsible for ensuring that we're not spending money we don't have. Yet this so-called stimulus bill has added to the urgency of this financial hurricane stalking America. This $1.3 trillion spending spree that the new liberal majority has engaged in has, in fact, created at least 32 new federal programs at a cost of about $137 billion. This spending spree of $1.3 trillion over these 17 legislative days has a lot more to do with expanding the power base of the liberal majority and growing the federal government's power than it does with stimulating the economy. In my opinion, this legislation will do, in fact, far more to turn America into France, ultimately, than it will to restore the strength and vibrancy of America's free market economy. And that's the best way to stave off this financial hurricane stalking America today. We I think as fiscal conservatives may be outnumbered today, Madam Speaker, but we have an obligation to stand up and speak out at every opportunity. We are entrusted by our constituents with the responsibility to lay out thoughtful, fiscally responsible alternatives to the profligate spending we see coming from the other side at a time of real national emergency, when we are seeing disturbing trends in job losses, when average Americans want to make sure that we as a Congress are being not only good stewards of their money, but what are we doing to ensure the security of their next paycheck? What are we doing to reassure Americans that we're doing everything in our power to protect the security of their job, to make sure that they don't have fear stalking their household that they're going to lose their job or lose the security of that health care coverage that they've always had. This liberal majority instead has been focused on creating brand new programs to pay for public school construction. That's an area that the Congress has traditionally, the federal government, steered away from because of the massive cost. This stimulus bill that, again, is going to do far more to grow the government than grow the economy, this stimulus bill promoted by the new liberal majority in Congress has set aside about $14 billion for school modernization and repair, $6 billion for higher education modernization and repair. That means for the first time that federal taxpayers are assuming the responsibility for rebuilding and repairing local public school buildings. Always traditionally the responsibility of local taxpayers, locally issued bonds by school districts and universities across the country. I know the Houston Independent School District tells me, just a complete off-the-cuff figure, they estimate they've got in the Houston Independent School District alone about $4 to $5 billion worth of need to rebuild, repair existing school buildings. Imagine the size of that obligation that this new liberal majority has now created for future generations to pay for. We are, in this, as fiscal conservatives, doing everything in our power to enlighten the American people, to let the public know, Madam Speaker, that there's a thoughtful, fiscally conservative alternative out there, America. We want to cut your taxes and cut spending to get this economy moving. We vigorously oppose this effort to grow the government and saddle future generations with more debt.